Hi everybody, welcome back. In the previous video we created this little pencil model which you can see here, and in this video what we're going to do is add some colouring to it like this one here. We've got a little piece of modification we need to make here before we get started. So I'm just going to zoom down here and give you guys a bit of an idea of what that is. What I want to do is create just a little slice through here, and that will create the polygons at the bottom that we can use for the graphite lead in the pencil, and that'll enable us to add a separate color up here for the wood. So what I'm going to do is just tap my space bar, and I'm going to zoom in either on the front side or on the side viewport. Okay, it doesn't matter which one, but just on one of these two. Just zoom in there like that. And what I want to do is pop up and find the Cut Faces tool. The button on the shelf for it's just here, and I believe they've moved it to the Mesh Tools. Yeah, Mesh Tools menu, Cut Faces tool just here. So I'm going to select Cut Faces tool, and the instruction it gives is click, drag to cut. So I'll tap my spacebar here just to make this a bit bigger for you to see. So all we do is we place our cursor where we want the cut to kind of center on. We hold down the left mouse button and then drag to either side like this. So as long as you're holding down the mouse button, you can position the slice wherever you want it to be. Now for this one, it doesn't really need to be a straight line. It doesn't need to be perfectly horizontal. It can be on a slight angle. If you want to make the slice horizontal, you can hold down the shift key and move the mouse, and what that'll do is make it snap to 45-degree angles like this. Okay, I'm not going to worry about sort of how level it is. I just want to place a cut through there. So when I release the mouse button, you'll see that it places a cut through where the line was. Okay. Now usually this tool is best used in either the front, top or side viewports. It's usually not a good idea to use it over here in the perspective viewport, because you don't know exactly what angle the cut will actually be on. It will function, but if you're trying to get an absolutely horizontal or vertical cut, for example, you won't be able to do it over here. You would have to do it in here using the shift button. Okay, so that's added in a little section for our graphite. Once you've done that, you can just turn the tool off by hitting Q or hitting the selection arrow over here. I'm going to place my cursor in the perspective view and tap the spacebar to zoom in. And now what we're going to do is add on the coloring for this pencil. So I'm going to start down the bottom and I'm going to work my way up. So the first thing I want to do is right click and hold on the object, and then come all the way down to the bottom. Actually, sorry, what we'll do is actually, we can do it this way. I'm going to come all the way down here to where it says Assign Favorite Material. And I'm going to create the graphite color first, and that's at the bottom, the actual point. And that's kind of a shiny type material. So I'm going to use a blin for that, because that is shiny. So Assign Favorite Material Blin. When I release the mouse button on this, it's going to pop open the attribute editor here. And it's added the actual material onto the entire object, because I have the object selected in object mode. In order to change the color on that material, I need to come over to the little arrow button here and just click all the way along to the right until I find, in this case it says Blin 4, for you guys it'll say Blin 1, assuming that this is the only material you've made. So I'm going to select the Blin tab just here, and I'm going to rename this. So I'm going to highlight where it says Blin 4, and I'm going to call this graphite or lead. Okay, and usually what I'll do for material is put in capital M-A-T after that. So graphite matte for material. Okay, So now what I want to do is reduce the color. I'm going to set the color up for this. So graphite's usually almost, it's not quite black, depending on the kind of pencil, but it's pretty close. So I want to make it kind of almost black. You can see it's quite shiny already. I'm going to increase the eccentricity a little bit, and what that's going to do is make the shininess a little wider on the material. And I can also increase, decrease the specular roll-off, or adjust the specular roll-off, I should say. You can bring it down a bit if you don't want it to be as dark. If you don't want it to be as bright. You can increase it to make the highlight a lot shinier. And you can kind of see it changing over here as well when you adjust that. One of the things I will do is reduce the reflectivity value. By default, this is very reflective, and it'll kind of almost show up like almost a mirror finish. So I'm going to reduce this down almost down to 0, something like about 0.05 or something like that. Other than that, there's really not much else I need to do there. So that's basically the coloring for the bottom end of the pencil. The next thing I'm going to do is select the timber part of the pencil, the wooden piece here, which has been kind of sharpened. So this is going to be kind of a brown color. So I'll right click and hold on the pencil. I'll select face mode like this, and then just click and drag a selection box just through the middle of these polygons here where the timber is going to be. And that will select just that section. Then we'll add a new material. So I'll right click and hold on that selected area, come down to assign favorite material, and this time I'm going to select a lambert, because a lambert has no shininess or reflective value. It's just a nice matte color. So lambert, I'll release my right mouse button on that, and you can see it's popped up lambert, in this case lambert 4. Once again, I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call this, I'll just call this wood matte. Hit enter to lock that in, and you'll see that the name changes up here. And then what I can do is select a kind of a wooden color from the color swatch. So you can either double click this or just click it once. If you double click it, it will pop up a free floating panel which will remain open. If you just click this, let me just close this so you can see this work. If you just click this once, it brings up this sort of floating color picker. If you move your mouse off this, it actually vanishes. So sometimes it can be a bit harder to keep this open while you're working, especially if you're trying to click on these little arrows and things. So you can either click once or twice on the swatch to get a color picker open. These ones usually, this one here is usually easier. So what I want to do is create a color that's roughly here, this brown color. So you'll need to move this dot sort of about here, and then dial this around until it's sort of in this orangey red area, and that'll give you sort of a brown color. You can see the RGB numbers there, so you could type those in as well. You can switch your color picker to HSV or RGB as well. Okay, so I want sort of a brown color, so just select that from the color picker. If I deselect over here by clicking in an empty spot in the grid, you can see that brown color is on there now, like that. Okay, so just click in an empty spot on the grid. We're still in face mode, so now what I can do is click and drag a selection through the main part of the pencil, and that's going to select those. Then we right click and hold again, come down to assign favorite material. Now this paint color that's on the pencil, I'm going to make that shiny as well, so that's going to be a blend, because we've got we can use sort of shiny values on the blend material. And I want to select a color for this pencil. Now I used the yellow color before, but there are other types of pencils. Some of the I think the Staedtler pencils have sort of a alternating black and red, so you could do something like that. So I might actually try that. So I'm going to call this, I'm just going to call this pencil red matte, and I'll change the color to like a sort of a dark red. So I'm going to pull the dial around into red and then move the dot across, so we've sort of got a darkish red color. It's not really super bright red, but it's not like a maroon color. Okay, so if I click in an empty spot in the viewport, you can see that that red color is now on the pencil. And now, in order to make it look like one of those Staedtler ones, what I can do is just holding down Shift, I can click every second face like this all the way around. Like that. So I've got 4 faces selected, and I can add a new material to those. So I'll right click and I'll come down to assign favorite material, and I'll select blend again. And this time what I can do is name this pencil black matte, and then change the color down here to black. So I'm just going to drag that down. Now, once again, I need to reduce the reflectivity on this because that's going to be an almost mirror finish, and I have to go back to the red one and do the same. So I'm just going to drop the reflectivity just down to maybe just below or just above a value of 0. So in this case it's 0.01. Let's just type that in there. And I need to get back to the red one now. So I'm going to right click and hold on the object and select object mode, and then just click on it. And what that's going to do is allow me to move across with the little arrow buttons again. You can see here I can see the graphite matte. I can move across and see all the materials that I've created on this object so far. So we've got the graphite, we've got the wood, there's the pencil red matte that I need, so I'm going to select that and then type in 0.01 down here for the reflectivity. So it's the same as the black paint as well. So then I can deselect the pencil, and you can see there we've now got that coloring. So we've got the graphite, the wood, and then the painted main section. Okay, we've got 2 more materials to do. One's going to be a metallic color for this section, and the other one's going to be sort of this rubbery kind of material for the eraser. Let's do the eraser first. That's a nice easy one. So we're just going to select the entire eraser model by clicking on it in the viewport. We'll right click and hold on that object and come down to assign favorite material, and I'm going to go with a Lambert for this because it's more of a matte color. It's not very shiny, and I'm going to rename this eraser matte, and we'll just give this basically a pink color. I've already got a pink color here that I did before, so you can see that's kind of moved around into this sort of pinky red area of the color wheel, and the dot position is sort of here, almost near the middle. RGB numbers are there if you need them. Okay, and that'll give us that nice eraser color. The final one is the collet. So we'll right click and hold on that with it selected and come down to assign favorite material. Now we could use a blend, a Fong, or a Fong E for this. It's not going to matter too much which we use. I might try a Fong for this one. So here we go. There's a Fong, and you could just call this metal. That's going to be easiest. M-A-T, like that. Press enter. And usually with metallic colors, we tend to have a slightly lower diffuse, and then we have a lot of reflection. But until we actually put some lights and things into the scene, it's not necessarily going to look too metallic. You can also increase the brightness a little bit, and you can adjust the cosine value and kind of drop the cosine value down. You can see here in this case, dropping it down, it's an odd one, this, because it goes from a value of 100 down to a value of 2. If I type in 1, you can see it won't let me go below 2, so that's the minimum. You can adjust the specular color as well. Different materials have slightly different settings, and this Fong material is probably not as handy as perhaps the Fong E. So what I'm going to do here is where it says Fong, I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to copy this by hitting Control C on a PC, or if you're on a Mac, you can hit the Command key, so Command C, and that's just going to copy that name. What I'll do here is change the type from Fong to Fong E, and we'll see if that works a little bit better. So you can see here we've got a completely different set of settings just here. A lot of the others are similar, but these are different, and I think we're going to have a little bit more control. So just here where it says Fong E1, I'm going to highlight that and then hit Command or Control V, and that'll paste in my name from the other material, and just hit Enter, and that'll lock that in. So we've just replaced the material type. So now we can actually go in and kind of adjust sort of the highlights and so on these. So we can adjust the highlight size like this, and we can adjust the roughness, which is sort of it's almost like the width of the highlight. You can see it changing up here as I change the slider positions. We can adjust the whiteness value as well, and also the specular color. We can crank that up and down. We wouldn't necessarily want to go too high with the whiteness, but the specular color we can increase, and that way we don't get it too glaringly white. So something like that would probably work. Reflectivity can remain quite high. We don't necessarily need reflected color. If we increase the reflected color value, you see it does get lighter, but that's not necessarily sort of accurate per se. So you can then adjust the diffuse, probably have it sort of about midway. Something like that should work okay. They never do look quite right on screen, but once you start putting other reflection options and things in, and you start rendering them using nice render settings, this will start to look more properly metallic. Okay, so let's hit done. So we've basically got all the colors on there. Everything's nicely smoothed out, unlike this one. I'm just going to smooth that one. So yeah, we've pretty much finished. It's a little bit different to this one, but I think this one's sort of a little bit closer to real life with this metal piece and so on. So the only other things that we need to do really are removing all this additional information out of the objects. So when I have a look at the channel box and I select one of these objects, you can see we've got these inputs. And these are all the different things we've modified or done to modify this shape and create the object, you see. We also have random numbers up here as well. And what we want to do basically is lock all of these numbers into zeros and ones for the scale. And we want to remove all these inputs so that we don't accidentally come in and change a number and then the whole object kind of scrambles up. That can happen sometimes. Removing this history also allows us to keep the file size quite small. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to click and drag a box across the different pieces of our model. We are going to come up to the mesh menu and select combine, and that's going to create a single object just here. So when we click on the pencil, the entire thing selects. The benefit of doing it in that order, combining them like that, is that it resets all of the numbers here to zeros and ones, which is what we want. And you'll see here that it's got this large input history, and we'll get rid of that now by coming up to Edit, Delete by Type, History. So when we delete that, you'll see that the input list disappears, and that's basically embedded all of those changes into the model structure. So that's now permanently set like that unless we actually go and use more modeling tools and start adjusting. Okay, so we can rename this object now. Currently it's called P cylinder, polycylinder 10. We'll just click on this and we'll call it pencil space mesh. So a mesh is a term that we use for our object, and we'll hit enter to lock that in. Okay, so there's our finished pencil. Now we can make a shorter pencil if we want. I'm going to duplicate this, so I'll go Edit, Duplicate, grab the Move tool, and we'll move this off to the side a little bit. Okay, and you'll notice with the duplication, it adds a number 1 at the end. So this is pencil mesh 1, and this is pencil mesh, okay? So in order to shorten this pencil, what we could do is right-click and hold on the object, and select vertex mode. And all these little pink dots at the top, if I drag a box around all of those, like that, it will select them. switch on the move tool over here if it isn't already, and click and drag on the green arrow and drag it down. So I can make this pencil as long or as short as I want. So, you know, if I wanted a pencil that looked like it's been almost completely used up, I can shorten it all the way down like that. And then click and drag, oh sorry, just click on an empty spot in the grid to deselect them. And I could also do the same thing with the eraser. If I click and drag like that, just across the top of the eraser, okay, I can push that down a little bit, like that. And holding control, I can deselect that section of vertices, and I can push this down again a bit like that, and so on and so forth. And that'll just make that look a bit shorter. So I've got the big pencil and the stubby pencil. There we go. Okay, so one of the things that I haven't done, which I should have done really, is save my file. It's something I often forget to do when I'm recording, but it's something you need to remember to do probably every few minutes. Don't wait for me to prompt you to save. Always just save every few minutes when you're working on your project. Okay, so I'm going to come up to File and hit Save Scene. You can see here at the moment it says Untitled. That means I haven't saved it yet. So I'll go File, Save Scene. And you can see here, because we had our project folder set up that we created right at the beginning, it's come into the Scenes folder inside the project folder. So all I need to do here is click or type in a name. So I'm going to call this Pencils, and I'm going to give it a version number. So that's going to be 001. And I'll press Save As. The student version will ask you if you want to save, and you'll just say yes. It's basically reminding you it was created using a student version. On the full commercial version of the software, this doesn't appear. Okay, it just saves it and then it's done. Down here, it's confirming that you have saved your model. So it says result and then the file path just there in the file name. So that's our little pencil model finished. So we'll leave this video here, and at some point we'll probably do some renders of this model. So until then, I will see you later.